Are you the dominant life form?
Way before the world of high-tech CGI and remarkable motion capture acting that gave us creatures like the Dementors and Gollum, there existed a stop-motion cinematic world where the creation of otherworldly creatures was not that easy. This didn't stop the geniuses of the cinema from creating the most well-known and classic creatures of their time. From Godzilla to Gamera, these giant monsters opened a new door to the possibilities beyond human comprehension. Today, we're gonna dive deep into this world of brilliance, discussing a total of 18 creature feature films that warrant a modern remake with a touch of high-tech advancement. So let's dig in. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, let's begin.
Oh my gosh, they're growing.
Number 1. Critters, 1986. Directed by Stephen Herrick as his directorial debut, Critters is a sci-fi comedy horror film that centers around a family in distress. Some alien creatures called Krites escape from an intergalactic prison and arrive on Earth. The Brown family, living in their rural house, comes in direct contact with the havoc the Krites create as their spaceship lands near the house and the creatures go crazy. These vicious little beings start attacking and ravaging whatever and whoever they come across, killing several people, and the Brown family ends up being stuck in their own house. Their young son Brad uses his explosive inventions to kill and scare away several of the Krites, but these stubborn aliens only increase in numbers and even in size. Meanwhile, the asteroid prison warden hires 2 bounty hunters to catch the escaped prisoners. These alien bounty hunters have a shapeless face. Hence, after coming to Earth, one of them shapeshifts into a singer named Johnny, while the other transforms into a sheriff named Jeff, who died at the hands of the Krites. Eventually, Brad and the bounty hunters meet and end up killing off the Krites and taking back the brown house that these creatures had hijacked. The film is a tightly packed result of remarkable creatives that are meticulously planned, designed, and executed, frame by frame. From the obvious genius of the Krites creatures, the shape-shifting scene of the bounty hunters, to the magical recreation of the brown home at the end of the film, everything was a result of minute details being put together by experts behind the scenes. The Krites are tiny balls of ugly fur and sharp teeth that are always hungry. These are not just some vile foodies, though. They have a brain of their own, often partaking in space engineering. They're seen moving in a clan and have the capability of seeing into the darkness as well as rolling into a ball at high speed. Often even a gigantic ball. Not just that, they can shoot darts from their bodies, which work as tranquilizers for humans. 4 sequels to the film have already been released, the most recent one being the 2019 film Critters Attack, which was not that well received by the fans. While some said it was alright, others found it bland and disappointing. Warner Brothers also produced a web series reboot of the film in 2019, called Critters: A New Binge, which received mixed reviews from the viewers. It was still more of a teenagers meet bounty hunters quest against the Krites. It would be more fun to see a serious approach taken on the modern remake of these creatures. I mean, just look at them. Those tiny little things bearing sharp teeth with malicious intent. It ought to be an interesting ride if it's ever made right. Number 2. The Blob, 1958. This low-budget film, directed by Irvin S. Ewart Jr., created a pathway for several remarkable versions of the amoeba-like creature to be born in the world of horror cinema. It features a gelatinous creature that crash lands on Earth through a meteorite and begins engulfing all the humans it comes into contact with, growing redder and larger in size along the way. A teenage couple, Steve and Jane, witness the Blob's doing firsthand and try to warn people, but who has ever believed a teenager? It's not until the Blob attacks the town's theater that the town erupts into chaos and folks try to kill the creature. Steve eventually notices that the Blob is scared of the cold, and through all the town's fire extinguishers combined, they're able to freeze the creature. In the end, it's transported to the Arctic in the hopes that it stays cold. A sequel to the film was released in 1972, known as Beware the Blob, or Son of Blob, but the most appreciated release to this day is the 1988 remake of the original with the same name, directed by Chuck Russell. It presented a more intense, horrifying, and gory version of the creature that would melt away people before assimilating them on itself. The talks of another remake have been around since 2009, but there have been various directorial step-downs and right disputes that have delayed the remake of this mind-blowing creature. We still look forward to a remake, which is supposedly going to be a joint venture production between Phantom 4 Films and Warner Bros. While the creation and filming of this particular creature took a lot of time and silicone, the presence of CGI will make it much easier and much more sinister. Imagine the Slimer from Ghostbusters, but inside out, meet red in color and without that funny face. Number 3. Tremors, 1990. This horror comedy film is directed by Ron Underwood and centers around two odd-job employees, Val and Earl, as they chance upon mysterious deaths in the desert town of Perfection. They soon realize that some giant creature that has a snake-like tongue is emerging from underground to attack and kill the townsfolk for food. The remaining survivors band together to fight off the creatures and escape the town. Eventually, they manage to outsmart the creatures and end up killing each one of them. The movie ended up getting 6 sequels, all straight to video, with the most recent one, Tremors Shrieker Island, dropping in 2020. The creatures kept evolving in both their looks and abilities with each sequel. In the latest one, they had their sharpest design yet and could unleash these ear-splitting shrieks. The bigger budget definitely did them justice. The sequels are great and all, but it'd be awesome to see a remake of the original, bringing back the OG creature with the help of today's tech. Number 4. It's Alive, 1974. You will love this film if you're one of those adults who doesn't like kids. Director Larry Cohen took the most innocent thing in the world, an infant, and turned it into a vicious killer. Yeah, you heard that right. This film features a deformed baby that has the appearance of a monster with fangs and claws, who instantly goes on a murder rampage as soon as it's born. Imagine that nightmare as parents. It kills the doctor and the nurses and escapes the hospital. The mother, still tied to the delivery table, is terrified at what she has seen, and moreover, what they would do to her child once they find it. On the other hand, the father immediately disowns the child and does everything he can to help the authorities find it. He even injures the child several times while shooting at it. However, the child never attacks its parents or elder brother. Eventually, the father realizes that the child is just frightened to be born in a world that doesn't understand it, and is attacking people just to survive. He apologizes to his child and tries to protect it, but the chasing mob of armed cops doesn't stop attacking, making the child charge at them for one last time before it's killed. The film ends with the news of another similar baby being born. Cohen turned an absolutely absurd idea into this emotionally intense film with blood splattered all over it. It also raised awareness regarding the dangerous drugs given to expectant mothers during that time. It was followed by 2 sequels and a remake in 2009, which wasn't well received. Even Larry Cohen asked people to avoid watching this remake, calling it beyond awful. So it's fair to say that the world needs a worthy remake of this gloomy sci-fi horror. Number 5. Relic, 1997. Peter Hyams directed this film, which is based on the 1995 novel by Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child. The story revolves around a mythical lizard-like creature that goes on a killing spree in a museum. Detective Vincent and biologist Margot team up to stop it. By the end, Margot discovers the creature is actually her missing colleague, who mutated into the monster, Cathoga, after drinking a ritual potion during his research. In a tough moment, she's forced to kill him with an explosion to save herself. Reactions to the movie were pretty split. Some thought it was just another generic monster flick, while others found it fun and clever. A lot of fans feel it didn't do justice to the novel. It's a shame it never got a sequel or a remake because the story had real potential. Number 6. The Fly, 1958. Based on the short sci-fi horror story of the same name by George Langeland, this film is directed by Kurt Newman. A scientist named Andre ruins his happy life with his wife Helena and son Philippe due to his scientific obsession with creating a teleportation device. He starts with small, non-living things like newspapers, and upon succeeding, he goes on to experiment with their pet cat, which doesn't go well. Eventually, he succeeds in building a human-sized transporter, which he calls a disintegrator-integrator. He decides to experiment on himself, but a fly accidentally enters the pod without his knowledge, and Andre's atoms get mixed with the fly's. Andre now possesses the head and arms of a fly, while it has Andre's tiny head and arms. The family tries to look for the fly, but it escapes, leaving them no choice but to watch Andre becoming more like a fly. Eventually, he decides to end his life with the help of Helena. Andre dies, but Helena is arrested as a prime murder suspect. She confesses the truth, but the police officer doesn't believe her. Eventually, Philippe and his uncle Francois find the mutated fly and show the officers the proof. The officer now declares Andre's death a suicide and saves Helena. Being the first film in the Fly film series, it opened doors for the upcoming masterpieces like the 2 sequels, and my personal favorite, the 1986 remake of the same name, as well as its sequel Fly 2. Director Kurt Newman passed away just a few weeks after the premiere, missing out on seeing the success of the brilliance he had brought into the world, which even became one of the biggest hits of that year. We can only imagine how the modern technology would enhance this already brilliant film. Number 7. Deep Rising, 1998. Written and directed by Stephen Sommers, it's an action horror film that involves a sea creature terrorizing a stranded luxury cruise ship. It mainly revolves around a group of mercenaries that are led by Hanover to hijack the cruise ship owned by Simon Canton. It turns out that Canton was the one who planned the sabotage so that he could collect the insurance money. Several other people get stuck amidst this selfish plan, which involves a petty thief named Trillian and a boat crew hired by the hijackers, which includes our protagonist, Captain John Finnegan. Before the hijack could take place, an unseen sea creature begins attacking the cruise ship and kills almost all the passengers on board, leaving behind their skinned remains. John and Trillian eventually discover the giant octopus-like creature and kill it using an explosion before escaping toward the land. Although the film received many negative reviews, with critics calling it a bad knockoff of the film Alien and other Predator films, with the passing time, it's garnered a cult-like following of the right audience, which warrants a remake in the new age of the Predator genre. Number 8. Anaconda, 1997. Directed by Luis Llosa and starring Jennifer Lopez, this film is an adventure horror and centers around a film crew that's navigating through the Amazon River in search of the Shirishama tribe they've decided to make a documentary about. On their journey, they help a snake hunter, Paul Cerrone, who turns out to be a greedy man that hijacks their boat after winning their trust. He injures the leader, Dr. Stephen Cale, and takes his role, directing them into the dangerous waters of some giant predatory snakes that immediately start feeding on the group. The crew deals with the greedy Paul as well as the predator at their back, and eventually only 3 out of the large group survive after tackling both the snakes. Although the film's scenery and effects were praised, the acting and the pacing were highly criticized. Still, the film garnered a cult classic following, with its unique monster. It became so famous that even its silliness was considered entertaining. The film went on to have 4 sequels and 1 Chinese remake. A reboot is in the process, as Sony Pictures announced one in 2020, with the possibility of Paul Rudd and Jack Black joining the star cast. Number 9. Lake Placid, 1999. Much like the Anaconda film series, Lake Placid also increased the fear of shallow waters among viewers. Directed by Steve Miner, it features a giant predatory crocodile that terrorizes Black Lake in Maine. The various mysterious deaths near the lake prompt an investigation of experts that involves paleontologist Kelly Scott, Fish and Wildlife Service Officer Jack Wells, along with their team. They're also joined by mythology professor Hector, who's sure that the murders were the deeds of a crocodile. The crew obviously doesn't take him seriously until they witness the live attack of a giant crocodile. They also learn that an elderly woman, Mrs. Bickerman, has been feeding the crocodile for years, even after the crocodile killed her husband. Following several failed attempts and a few casualties, they're finally able to tranquilize the crocodile and take it to study. But the elderly woman is still seen feeding tiny crocodile babies in the end. Although the first film was not well received, garnering many negative reviews, it still went on to become one of those films you watch for the fun of it. It was followed up by 4 sequels and even an Anaconda and Crocodile face-off. The most recent film in the franchise was released in 2018, which didn't go well among fans. Since it has been about 7 years since the last Lake Placid film, it's high time for a good CGI crocodile to be produced. Number 10. Humanoids from Deep Space, 1980. Also known as Monsters, it's a sci-fi horror film executively produced by Roger Corman. It's set in a fishing town called Noyo in California that erupts into chaos as mysterious deaths start taking place along the shoreline. The townsfolk soon realize that several aquatic mutants have grown enough intelligence to view humans as a threat to their existence, and are now eliminating men while violating women to reproduce and grow their own species. These humanoid sea creatures are the result of a failed genetic experiment done to increase fish growth in a local cannery. During a waterfront festival, these creatures come out of hiding and openly attack the town. The townsfolk come together to fight off all the humanoids, and at first, it seems like they've been defeated, but the end scene reveals the reproductive success of the humanoids as a female victim bears a mutated child. The director credited for this film, Barbara Peters, asked several times for her name to be removed, as she was appalled at the exploitation of women regarding the violation scenes with nudity that were unnecessarily added without her consent to please a certain demographic. She considered this film offensive to herself and to all women who worked on it, and claimed that this was not the film she was hired to make. Hence the modern remake of Barbara's version of this film that she was supposed to direct, the one that focused on the plot rather than objectification, needs to see the light of day. Number 11. Squirm, 1976. Jeff Lieberman directed this natural horror film, set in the fictional town of Fly Creek, Georgia. After a massive storm, the town's power lines go down, electrifying the soil, and driving millions of aggressive worms to the surface. These electrified, flesh-eating worms start attacking people, turning the town into a nightmare. Mick, who's visiting his girlfriend Jerry, teams up with her to figure out what's going on and how to survive. The chaos finally ends when the power is restored, even putting the worms out of their misery. Lieberman himself admitted he wasn't aiming for a deeper message with this film, but that didn't stop people from reading into it. Some saw it as a nature's revenge on humanity or a grim reminder of how we're all just food for microorganisms in the end. Despite its eerie visuals and accidental symbolism, this movie remains an underrated gem that could totally shine if revisited today. Number 12. Them, 1954. This black and white sci-fi monster film is directed by Gordon Douglas. It features some big bugs. When a colony of ants gets irradiated as a result of an atomic bomb testing, they mutate into their gigantic forms and begin attacking and eating humans. Set in the New Mexico desert in LA, it's considered one of the first films that explored the dangers of using nuclear weapons. It begins with a girl witnessing the loss of her family and identifying the culprit as some giant ants. The military tries to eradicate the ant colony, but if they kill one, 2 more arrive. Even though they manage to wipe out the nest, the queen ant escapes and starts a new colony underground in LA. In the end, our heroes destroy the colonies and take down the final queen, but they're still haunted by the fear of what could happen next, especially since the Trinity atomic bomb tests have already happened. With ongoing wars and the constant threat of nuclear weapons despite prohibition treaties, a remake of this classic film could be a powerful reminder of the consequences of humanity's greed. Number 13. Virus, 1999. In the Pacific Ocean, an American tugboat crew chances upon a Russian communication research ship that seems to have been deserted. On the command of their greedy captain Robert Everton, who wants to sell their findings to Russians for millions of dollars, they board the ship with high hopes. Much to their dismay, they meet the only Russian survivor, Nadia, who warns them about some alien presence that killed everyone on the ship. While the protagonists are sensible enough to be careful, most of the crew remains blinded by greed. It's not until they come face to face with the cyborg hybrid monsters created by alien intelligence through the assimilation of the machines and the mutilated human organs that they realize they've messed up. Directed by John Bruno, the film was a commercial flop, with mostly negative reviews regarding the weak plot and underwhelming special effects. However, the concept of the highly intelligent alien beings assimilating into the human world still stands as an influential idea. By strengthening the original film's weaknesses, mainly the plot and special effects, the film could be remade into a blockbuster hit. Number 14. Piranha, 1978. In an attempt to create a Jaws knockoff, the director Joe Dante ended up creating a better alternative to Jaws 2. It introduces us to the genetically altered piranha that we see during the Vietnam War to be used as biological weapons. Even though the government tried to get rid of them post-war, some of the creatures still survived. These now infest the local river near an abandoned military research facility and attack whoever they come across. When a teenage couple goes missing, an investigator named Maggie arrives in the town to find their whereabouts. She partners with the town drunkard Paul and learns about the mutated creatures. The two alert the authorities and together try to stop these creatures from reaching the area. The film got mixed reviews. I mean, some thought it was better than the Jaws sequel, but the over-the-top violence towards women and kids, plus the weak special effects, kept it from getting the love it deserved. Number 15. Leviathan, 1989. Directed by George Cosmatos, this is a co-production of Italy and the US. It follows an underwater mining crew that works for a private corporation. During one of their missions, they find a sunken Soviet ship named Leviathan and bring back all the salvaged items to their ship, including a mysterious vessel filled with vodka. This starts a chain of crazy events, as it's later unveiled that they have unleashed a genetic mutation that was part of the Soviet experiment. Whoever consumes the drink starts mutating and assimilating together to transform into a grotesque entity. Not only that, the evil corporation even gives up on the crew, forcing them to be stuck underground and going so far as to declare them dead. The film got mostly negative reviews, as people said it was too similar to Alien, and it was also released during the time of other underwater monster films, which people liked better. Despite its similarities with other Predator films, the isolated setting of the underwater is effectively claustrophobic to watch, and the melting gore mutation is quite praiseworthy. Number 16. Gamera, the Giant Monster, 1965. This Japanese creature film derives inspiration from the success of another kaiju, fictional monster film, of 1954 called Godzilla. Directed by Noriaki Yuasa, this film introduced us to a giant prehistoric turtle with tusks, which gets awakened after an atomic bomb explosion. This creature is named Gamera, who begins rampaging the Japanese landscape. While officials from all around the world gather to find a way to stop Gamera, a child named Toshio, who was forced to abandon his pet turtle, is saved by Gamera. The boy believes Gamera to be his pet turtle who somehow got mutated into this giant being, and develops a close attachment with the creature. After many failed attempts at getting rid of Gamera, the authorities manage to lure it to a rocket and launch it to Mars. As for Toshio, he decides to become a scientist and visit Gamera in the future. Although people assumed the film would flop as it lacked financial backing, it did better than anyone's expectations. It was followed up by Gamera vs. Barugan, and had various sequels and remakes, the most recent being the 2023 animated series Gamera Rebirth. Although this creature has been around for a long time in many evolved forms, the original one definitely deserves a proper comeback. Number 17. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. The classic horror flick, directed by Jack Arnold, is about an amphibious creature found in the Amazon. A team of scientists sets out to explore the jungle after discovering its fossil, only to be attacked by the creature, aka Gillman, who kidnaps Kay, the lead scientist's girlfriend. In the end, Kay is saved and the creature is sent back into the lake, with the scientist choosing not to kill it. There are 2 sequels, but a bunch of remakes never made it off the ground. However, in August, it was announced that James Wan might be remaking it. The movie even inspired Guillermo del Toro's The Shape of Water, which snagged a ton of awards. Number 18. It Came From Beneath the Sea, 1955. This black and white monster classic is directed by Robert Gordon. Following a hydrogen bomb test, a gigantic radioactive octopus is driven out of the sea depths into the cities. It begins attacking ships and shoreline cities, spreading chaos all over the nation. After many casualties, the military is finally able to scare the octopus back into the sea, using a flamethrower, and kill it through the torpedo explosion. Although the octopus is shown as a great monster, the real monsters in such films are humans themselves, who invade both aquatic and terrestrial lives through their dangerous experiments, forcing these innocent animals into painful mutation. And when these animals act out of their own control, humans brutally blast them off, deluding themselves to be some heroes. These kind of films are much needed in today's world, where humans take the self-proclaimed position of the superior species, using other organisms as ornaments of their greed. Marvelous verdict. That was our list of some remarkable creature feature films fans are still awaiting a worthy remake for. Although many creators have tried to bring back most of these creatures into the modern world, they still lack the original touch of the good old classics, which just isn't enough for the fans who are still hooked on the nostalgia of these marvelous creations. What are your favorite creatures from the old times that you'd like to see in the modern live-action films? Let us know in the comment box below.